Ms. Farid, you're welcome again. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you for having me and inviting me to this committee. Chairman Brown, ranking member to me, members of Congress. My name is Naheed Farid. I'm a member of Afghanistan Parliament, representing the people of Herat, which is my hometown. And I've served in Parliament for more than 11 years. Since 2019, I have been the chairperson of Human Rights, Civil Society, and Women Affairs Commission. And here in Washington, D.C., I am an advisory board of the U.S.-Afghan Democratic Peace and Prosperity Council. I appear before you today still in shock that the Taliban and the Haqqani network and Al-Qaeda have taken over Afghanistan. For years, my family and I have faced death threat from the Taliban. I cannot count on how many friends and colleagues I have lost to Taliban violence. A week before they took Kabul, Taliban entered Herat, found my house, searched for my family. Luckily, my family and I were able to escape, but we just left everything behind. For Afghan women of my generation, we remember the Taliban from 1990s. This sudden takeover of the country brings back so many of the nightmares. When I was a girl growing up in Herat, I loved going to school, becoming a pilot one day. When Taliban took control of Herat, they shut down the schools, and I was forced to spend all of my time at home with my female relatives. Today, we are right now what we as Afghan women have known all along is clear for the world to see. The Taliban cannot be trusted. Afghan women and girls face blatant gender apartheid by Taliban and a return to the 1990s. The Taliban have stripped most women of the ability to work. Girls cannot participate and attend secondary schools. Young women who grew up in a free and open society are now hiding in a fear. Make no mistake, the Taliban govern through fear. Their soldiers indiscriminately whip civilians in the streets. They have resumed public execution and molestations. They have committed forced displacement and atrocities against Tajiks and Hazaras in Panjshir, in Daikundi, and many other places of Afghanistan. They have curbed free speech and decimated Afghanistan's once thriving media sector that we had. So how can Congress help Afghan people? I have had so many meetings with members of Congress these past few years, and I know so many of you have a deep bond with Afghan people, a deep bond with Afghan women. And what the Afghan people need right now are three things. One, immediate humanitarian assistance. Two, legislation that prohibits U.S. recognition and normalization of relations with the Taliban. And three, support of the local NGOs and civil society who can deliver basic services in the absence of a normal government. Afghanistan faced a dire humanitarian crisis because of the healthcare system collapse, millions of internally displaced persons, and widespread food insecurity in the winter that is coming. Without outside assistance, more Afghan will suffer, more Afghan will die. But the Taliban cannot be allowed to set terms and conditions on how this humanitarian assistance is delivered and who is it delivered to. Humanitarian corridors need to be established where international and local NGOs do deliver their work without any interference from the Taliban. The Taliban regime cannot be trusted because their hardline beliefs and their partnership with dangerous terrorist groups. The Taliban pose an imminent threat to the region and to the world. I urge the members of this committee to support legislations that prevent any U.S. administration from recognizing the Taliban and normalizing any relation with Taliban. I encourage the members of this committee to act quickly in a bipartisan way to draft and pass legislation that encourage no U.S. administration ever recognizes the Taliban. Not only can the Taliban regime be trusted, it also has minimal capacity for governance. We are witnessing the breakdown in basic services such as healthcare and education and banking and finance and aviation and many more. The U.S. should not provide the Taliban with the capacity building support. Instead, the U.S. should provide direct support to Afghan NGOs and civil society. As someone with a background in nonprofit management and a family foundation that built many schools for girls throughout Afghanistan, I know firsthand how valuable local NGOs are to so many ordinary Afghans, especially to women and girls. The US government must find ways to provide funding, capacity building, and also support to those local organizations and NGOs through a very trusted corridor. I'll stop here and looking forward for the question.
Ms. Farid, you are clearly the most experienced in terms of the life that you lived in Afghanistan and the extraordinary accomplishment that you made as a female Afghani and being elected. What opportunity exists out there with a nation of 39 million people, half of whom are less than 19 years old? I think probably 70% of whom are less than 25 years old. So they've gotten a glimpse of what life can be without a Taliban leadership. What optimistic message can you send to the men and women who fought there, who sowed those seeds?
I want to quote one of officials of Afghanistan that said that Afghanistan is not dead, it is wounded. And the majority of the population, that 70% are the under age of 30, 50% of the population that are women. They're all there. Afghanistan exists. And as I told you, a syndicate took over as a group that wanna rule Afghanistan by force, but that's not the government people of Afghanistan want. People of Afghanistan want to choose who rule the country. Maybe a woman. And that's why I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful that the allies of Afghan people, including U.S. Congress, continue to help Afghan people, Afghan women, build the corridors to help and capacity building the local NGOs of Afghanistan, building a coalition, a global coalition to ban any recognition of Taliban, and also helping humanitarian funds to go to Afghanistan and prevent the problem and the shortage of food and the shortage of healthcare that people of Afghanistan are suffering.
Ms. Farid?
I think beside of having a peacekeeping coalition, United States needs to partner with a regional player, a regional actor near to Afghanistan. So there will be a base of humanitarian assistance near Afghanistan where NGOs can operate, where NGOs can have a staff that can collect wages there. I think that also is very important, that this corridor has to have a base around Afghanistan in countries like Tajikistan. So we have to have partners with the United States around Afghanistan that can facilitate this corridor. And also, this banking system should not operate inside of Afghanistan because the head of central bank of Taliban is a terrorist. And any money that goes through Western Union, any other procedure, they have hand, they can block, they can do anything with that money.
How we get the relief back into Afghans who are starving. And yet, right now, I think I have to respond a little bit. I think I was at all of the same meetings as my colleague from Massachusetts, and I came away with a slightly different approach that was being conducted. It's my understanding in reviewing and in listening to the generals, 3 of them, who were before our Armed Services Committee, not just in public session, but in classified sections, who made it very clear that they would never withdraw on a date certain, and that to a person, the recommendations that had been provided was to do a conditions-based withdrawal with the hopes that, first of all, it would be a withdrawal that was not in chaos, and it would have allowed the Afghan government an opportunity to continue with a reserve force continuing there. The conditions-based versus date certain would have allowed that the Al Qaeda and the Taliban would have been held in check. I'm just going to, and ma'am, I'm going to begin with you. Would you share with us, as a representative of the Parliament of Afghanistan, what your expectations had been with regard to a transfer of the responsibilities for the defense of Afghanistan directly to the national government? Can you share what your goals had been and what happened when there was a date certain established?
Thank you so much. Both questions, I want to answer both questions, actually. And, the day that Doha Agreement was signed, it emboldened Taliban. Then the withdrawal announcement even gave them more power that demoralized the Afghan National Security Forces. And that led to more demoralization of the people of Afghanistan. Okay, so there are so many factors that contributed to the situation, but one of them was a hasty withdrawal. The hasty withdrawal was one of the reasons that unfortunately led to the situation that we have right now. The level of loss that Afghan security forces had was 100 casualties per day. That level of loss is unsustainable for any security forces in the world. It's unbelievable that we are losing 100 soldiers per day. Okay, so this was the situation. Unfortunately, besides, the Air Force was grounded because of the withdrawal, because half of the Air Force had to have the maintenance that the contractors already left due to the withdrawal. That also contributed to the situation, and we also lost so many brave commandos, brave soldiers, policemen, police officers in the front line of the battle of fighting against global terrorism, against Taliban, Al Qaeda, and Haqqani network. Okay, we shouldn't forget them, and we have to admire them. But at the same time, I, as a member of parliament, and many in my parliament, we use the platforms, different platforms, including being the advisory board of DPPC, Democratic Peace and Prosperity Council. We met with, at 1 week before the collapse, we met with Armed Service Committee and Foreign Affairs Committee of the Congress, telling them about the pending collapse of Afghanistan. Factors inside of Afghanistan also contributed to the situation. For example, the mismanagement of the peace process by Afghanistan government, President Ghani and his national security advisor, the mismanagement of war effort by isolating so many advisors and generals, and replacing them by loyalists that surrounded to Taliban just in the months of July and August also contributed to the situation. But here we are. We could have been in a better situation if the announcement of the withdrawal would not happen at the beginning of the seasoning of fight of Taliban. If US could wait few more months until the winter finished, and the fighting season of Taliban would have finished, because so many other things happened, and peace still happened, the withdrawal announcement also happened, and demoralized the situation, and the soldiers of the army and Afghan National Security Forces and the defense forces, we would have been in a better situation.